Who should be the next UK Prime Minister? Welcome to Mark and Pete. Here's a thought.
The tale of Tory tragedy. Cameron caused a campaign of calamity. May's mayhem meant her mandate was amiss. Johnson oversaw a surge in insanity. Who's next to lead us into the infernal abyss? Clergyman
Yes.
Pete, I ask you, who do you think should be the next UK Prime Minister?
Well, we have an interesting bunch of people who are possible.
What a fine bunch of characters.
No, the thing is, Boris Johnson, having resigned as leader of the party, is still Prime Minister. Although he could step down and have the Deputy Prime Minister take over, so far at least we hear that he's intending to stay on. So what we're looking for is someone to replace him weeks, possibly months' time, but hopefully weeks' time. And it has to be a member of the Conservative Party. Not only that, needs to be an MP, although I think technically you could be in the House of Lords, but I'm not sure about that. I know in the past that has been the case. You need to be someone then, a politician in the Conservative Party. So you haven't got that many already. You haven't got that many.
But there is one other qualification, and that is, in theory, you should have credibility, integrity, and you should have experience.
Well, that's the thing. Now, we don't have anyone with that, but not with all those things. Now, in terms of integrity, we're going to look at a few people now and give my suggestion. But the problem is the lack of experience with the people with integrity. So, well, they haven't got enough experience to reveal their evil lack of integrity. Well, that could be the case, but we just don't know. Whereas those who have had experience, well, let's take one for an example. Let's take Rishi Sunak. Possibly,
yes, please take him.
They're possibly the biggest name out there at the moment because he was the Chancellor during the lockdowns, giving out money in terms of furlough payments to pay people to stop working during the lockdowns. Now, he really lost his grip on the economy, and we're now in more debt than we were after the Second World War.
Correct.
That's the level that the finances have been ridden down by Rishi Sunak. But those were extraordinary situations. So that's really, I guess, unfair to say that he would govern like that were he to be well,
let me give you my view on Rishi at least.
So I'm not recommend. You asked me which I recommend.
Yes.
I'm saying not Rishi Sunak, but he's actually one of the best of a bad bunch. What are your views on?
Well, I think that, to your point, that Rishi comes with, in a rather positive light, he comes with experience. He has, like a lot of politicians, particularly in these cabinet ministers as well, gone through some unprecedented times. We've seen the issues of having to sort of come out of the Brexit period, the economy being hit by, of course, the COVID-19 issue, but to the point where I think that, albeit that these are unprecedented times, I still believe that economically, his strategy hasn't worked. And you can argue that to a large extent, he has been influenced by Boris Johnson. But nevertheless, his biggest challenge, I think, is disassociating himself with Boris Johnson and proving that his mandate going forward will address the issues of today. And one of the biggest things that the British people are looking at is, how do you solve the rampant inflation? That is definitely an issue. How do you solve the economic challenges where, as interest rates are going up, the country is getting further and deeper in debt? Now, when it comes to the actual trading figures, there is still unknown, but it looks like the economy is still creaking somewhat. So he can't trade his way out from that side. So to me, he's a bit tarnished. But what I will say is this, and I know that this is a desperate situation that we're in, I think he is probably the best person to see out this term, so the Conservatives' term over the next 2 years. I don't see anyone else who has the insights to the ability to run government in the same way at that level. And I think he has more recognition on an international level, and I believe that he is probably the best place to cope with the domestic issues as well as the international issues.
Well,
so I don't like him. I wish that we could have something else, but he is the best one.
But my issue with him, or with the situation you paint about being a caretaker prime minister until the next election, is that's not guaranteed. He's not going to step down. Yeah. If he's prime minister, the Conservatives going forward will have him as their prime minister, likely winning the next election. So he'll be there for some time to come.
There is one other thing to bear in mind, British people. Last time that we had somebody who was as Chancellor as Prime Minister, Mr. Brown, look what happened.
It didn't go well, yeah. Now, the previous Chancellor, Sajid Javid, he also has the same problem to do with his handling of finances. Now, when he was Chancellor, he wasn't Chancellor for very long, but he said he's a low-tax Tory and, very conservative, much as Rishi Sunak was saying going in, and then things changed. He went on to be Health Secretary, did Sajid Javid. He did. And he then pushed for a lot more spending and reckless spending on health, social care, and for an increase in national insurance. So he again, he's blotted his copybook.
I think he's blotted his copybook on another front, and here's something that nobody else has really brought out. So Sajid did come with credibility at first, and to your point, his tenure as a Chancellor is one thing, but you can't just keep bailing out. You can only resign so many times if things aren't going your way. I mean, to me, my worry is that what's he going to do? Take the role and say, I don't like it, and so I'll go. Now, the point here is that I understand that if you don't agree on policy, if you're hindered, if you have so many factors against you, you probably got to move on. But look at his tenure. Chancellor, short term, Health Secretary, short term. I think that there's some issues and factions where I don't believe he will command a cabinet. If I look at all these candidates we're going to talk about, I can't see Sajid actually bringing them all together, because the people we are going to be talking about may not necessarily be prime minister, but they will be leading some of the key areas of government.
Now, we don't want to go through all of the possible candidates. Some have put their names forward, others haven't. Just to mention a few: Nadim Zahawi, Chancellor very recently, and then
the man whose decision making is very short term and strange.
Within hours said that Boris Johnson should go. That's such a lack of integrity. I don't think he can come back from that. He's talked about tax cuts and other things, but I just don't think that he's in a position to command respect. Liz Truss, of course. What do you make of her? She calls being Foreign Secretary. Go ahead.
She absolutely. So I will say that the one thing that she does have is that she's got international standing. So we'll talk about the negatives in a minute, but just on the positives. And I know that she was one of those individuals who, and again, was very supportive of Boris Johnson when it talks about addressing some of the big issues. The challenge that she has is a couple of things which I know we will highlight. One, she was associated very strongly with supporting Boris Johnson. Of course, that's obviously now has to change. And so politically, I'm not sure that people within her own party, let alone the people of Britain, would see her quite really as a leader that can command going forward. And then the other thing is that, and I think we'd like to sort of get your view on this, is her view on foreign policy, which is a little bit more warmongering than we would like.
Well, this is why I'm very much against her, because she enthusiastically took on this supporting Ukraine position. Now, listeners to this show and to the other show I'm regularly on each week, the Beryl and Pete show over on Flame Radio, we've been talking about this problem with supporting Ukraine in a proxy war about Russia, against Russia, and going for it, pushing for it, such that we are effectively outwarring Russia, unnecessary warmongering, and could cause a major war in the future. And I think because of Liz Truss's attitude, many statements, really demonizing the Russians, I think if we put her in place, we're more likely to stumble into a major war. So I just don't want her in that position. I think that she's someone I'd be definitely against.
Yes. What about he has put his name forward, which is Grant Shapps, experienced politician.
Now, Grant Shapps, I mean, the problem with Grant Shapps now, I don't know if he listens to the show. So if you do, Mr. Shapps, just close your ears for a moment. Because I've heard Grant Shapps over the years appear on various discussion shows and be interviewed and whatnot, I have a certain reaction to him over the years. And now when someone mentions his name, a little bit of sick just comes up into my face. He is so slimy. Therefore, he's very useful.
Sounds like he's got all the credentials.
Yeah, he's very useful because he can be sent out to lie or toe the party line and cover up when there's been disaster. Yeah. He could be sent out there and be smooth, and he's very good at it.
Yeah. But I will say that his recent record on dealing with the RMT and so on perhaps hadn't gone that well.
No.
But I know I wouldn't necessarily judge him just on that alone. No. But I think that there is, as you say, some other issues there. So there are many candidates.
Well, I would just say that he's not really. I mean, really, he has put forward in comments. As he put his name forward, about how he would deal with the financial situation. And he's talking about cutting taxes, but cutting taxes for the most vulnerable, not for everyone, which I think it should be for everyone to make a difference, a major difference in the economy. And then talking about giving state support to firms with high levels of energy consumption, whereas really what you want to do is get the price of energy down. I mean, it's just a non-conservative way of operating.
Yes.
Long term, it will get us into bigger trouble. Now, we were discussing this before the show, and I said, well, there is someone that I favour, and that is Suella Braverman, partly because of her name.
Attorney General?
Which is current Attorney General. And for those listening aboard, the Attorney General is an MP. It's a member of the government. The Attorney General is a position, head of the, I suppose, head legal person in the country, but actually an MP and part of the government.
Former barrister as well.
A slightly different situation to in other countries. But she has launched her leadership team, and she actually announced that she would be launching it even before Boris Johnson had resigned. So she was maybe the first.
And anticipation is always good.
Now, Suella Braverman is an interesting character in that she's a Brexiter or Brexiteer, depending on how you put it, so very in favour of capitalising on the fact that we've left the European Union. Now, other candidates that we've spoken of are in that position, but she has strong credentials in that she seems to have always stuck to that. It wasn't part of the Leave campaign. She was talked about the treatment of Northern Ireland and standing up against the EU's attempt to draw it into the EU and remove the border there. And she's also spoken out about illegal immigration. She resigned from government under Theresa May.
But who didn't?
So what was that? Sorry.
Well, who didn't?
Yes, who didn't? Yeah, but she's had some experience, and she's. In the major decisions she's made, I've approved of what she's said and done, and she's trying to get rid of all this woke rubbish. She says as well. That's a quote, and she's therefore, I think, in a good position to steer the government in the right direction. Yeah. However, going against her, she doesn't necessarily have a commanding presence or charisma, and she doesn't have the experience at the highest level of government like Sunak does. But of the people that we mentioned, I prefer her simply because of her apparent integrity, and also because of her various policy and attitudinal positions, which I agree with. So the one thing that I would say is, part of my contribution on this show is as a clergyman, from a Christian point of view, I would say I would prefer a Christian to be the Prime Minister. But we haven't had a Christian for some time as Prime Minister. Certainly Boris Johnson was not a Christian, and quite famously didn't live a Christian lifestyle, but not a Christian. So the fact that Suella Braverman is an active Buddhist doesn't decide against her, because we're always having non-Christians.
Well, let me just give you from my sense, and I'll just pick up on a bridge link to what you said. I think whoever is the leader should be of moral upstanding, which was something we have not seen in the former leader. And what I would also invite is certainly from a business perspective, but I think it reflects on those people who are carefully looking at their pockets right now and their investments, which is, I do hope that, first of all, whoever it is has a very clear agenda, clear vision in terms of where Britain should move forward. What are we going to be as a nation? How do we solve these immediate challenges? And implements with very, very clear policies, which again are actually fulfilled. And I have not seen that for quite some time from the Tory government. And I do hope that this is an opportunity for somebody to come in and make the difference. Yes. I doubt it, but what do the public think?
Yes, what do you think? We've given our thoughts. We've differed slightly, recommended slightly two different candidates. No, not slightly, recommended two different candidates. Just to remind you, Mark went with Rishi Sunak and I went with Suella Braverman. And those two seem to us the best of a bad bunch. But let us know what you think. Go to markandpete.com, just sign up there, and you can leave as many comments as you like on this episode and any others you might choose to listen to. But from Mark and Pete, but goodbye for this week.